My dude, welcome to part 2. Hearing more about interpretations of the song Hallelujah. I thought I'd change the angle just a little bit. Got my All Might poster over there. If you don't know who All Might is, watch some My Hero Academia. It's my favorite anime at the moment. Sarani Mukoi! That means go beyond. And then they say, Plus Ultra! Plus Ultra, as you might see over there. Anyway, it's not the point. We're going over Jeff Buckley's version of Hallelujah. I hope you enjoyed listening to that. Honestly, I hadn't listened to this song before I decided I wanted to interpret the lyrics of the song. I didn't realize that this is the version that popularized Leonard Cohen, and not Leonard Cohen specifically, but it popularized the song Hallelujah. This is one of the feats that made Leonard Cohen's version stand out so well. And in 1994, Jeff Buckley thought it would be a great idea to cover this. Now, who the hell is Jeff Buckley? I'm sure there's plenty of people watching this being like, I've never heard of him. Jeff Buckley in the 90s and the 80s was an insanely talented guitarist. Not to mention, he was a pretty good singer, as if you couldn't tell, and put in a lot of emotion behind the lyrics that he wrote. Especially in this song, man. If you watch his live version, which we'll get to later, his live in Chicago, it's one of the most amazing things I've heard. But I'm going to go over that later. You'll notice there's a little bit of variation in this version of the song. Now, instead of having a chorus in the background, it's just him playing a guitar. Pretty bold choice, I mean, at the time, probably. Now, about Jeff Buckley, talented as he was taken away from this earth way too early. He passed away in 1997 from drowning. He passed away at the age of 30. It's crazy to believe that when he was 27, he made this version of the song. I'm 29 now, and I don't know, it's just interesting to comprehend. And he would close with this song every single performance onward. So, if you didn't hear this version of the song, is a little bit different. So I'm going to start out with the variation in verses. So compared to Leonard Cohen's version of the song, he omits the third and the fourth verse. The third verse, sorry, I'm going to grab my paper and notes. Third verse being, you say I took the name in vain, I didn't even know the name. And then the fourth verse starting with, I did my best, it wasn't much. I couldn't feel, so I tried to touch. Rather, he puts in 3 other verses that Leonard Cohen originally wrote. So it will be, but baby, I've been here before. I've seen this room and I've walked this floor. Well, there was a time you let me know what's really going on below. And maybe there's a God above and all I ever learned from love. Now, as to the sound. Talking about the song, I'm just going to start off with the song and I'll get to the sound and the music. It's a different type of hallelujah that he's praising, if you couldn't tell. The guitar at the beginning sounds very intimate. It's just him and the guitar and his voice. You have 2 instruments and 1 performer. And see, the guitar is just kind of playing casually. It's very intimate. It's very sensual. You'll notice this version of the song, it's pretty sexual. I don't know if you can hear it, and we're going to talk about this. It's a pretty sexual version of the song. The way that Jeff Buckley described this song was, and I quote, the hallelujah of bedroom pleasure, and another quote being, a hallelujah to the orgasm. Very interesting. It's a different take on love. Instead of it being the romantic love, the ideal romantic love that Leonard Cohen focuses on, he focuses on the sexual love. So the intimacy is there. There is genuine love. There is lust implicit behind it, but the love is still there. And you can hear that through his various the way that he decides he wants to sing the song. The variations. There we go. I know words. So the verse 1, he starts with Leonard Cohen's verse 1. If you hear a cover of Hallelujah and it doesn't start with this first verse, I will advise you, don't listen to that song. That song sets up the tone and the contradictions implied in each verse. So he still starts with that. Well, I've heard a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? And during lines 4, 5, and 6, he doesn't deviate from Cohen's original. Like, there's little variation in timing, but the notation, he stays true to the notation implied in the lines. Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah. And listen to that hallelujah. That hallelujah at the last, not mine, but his. That hallelujah at that last line in the verse. It's going to be replicated a few times, but also it's going to be in variation. You'll see it replicated in the idealization in various verses. So in verse 2 and verse 4, this specific hallelujah and how it sounds is replicated. Listen into that. And then you get to the chorus, and you'll notice the end of the chorus, each hallelujah. It's a little bit of a slur. There'll be variations in the hallelujah. Not a big deal. He's not trying to impersonate Cohen. Intimidate. Motherfucker, my song now, bitch! But he starts the second verse with what Cohen did. Like, your faith was strong and you needed proof. And this is what I've gone over before. It's a lot of the Old Testament. And those lines, replicating was in the Old Testament. But the last line that he sings, it's like, the last three lines, I should say, doesn't sound the same as Cohen. Cohen focuses on more of the romantic love. And then from the romantic love goes and says, well, if I can't show love to someone, I'll show love to a concept that I care about. In this case being music. This one, Buckley says, like, she tied you to a kitchen chair, she broke your throat and she cut your hair, and from your lips she drew the hallelujah. Very sexual at the end. Not that I can replicate what Buckley can do. At the end, you'll hear a minor crescendo, and then from your lips she drew the hallelujah. Gradual decrescendo. Kind of in the sense of experiencing an orgasm with someone you're in love with. Not that I know. That's weird. Though you'll notice the way that Buckley sings, it's as if he lost a lover, maybe someone that he was physically intimate with and lost. We don't know how the loss occurred. Well, it's kind of implied in the later verses, especially at the very end. Though, in one of his live versions of the song, he adds in additional lyrics, which implies that he lost someone through death, but we're not talking about that right now. This one, it just implies that he fell in love with someone who he was sexually intimate with. And that last line in the second verse shows how he fell in love with this person, and maybe it was through sex. I don't know. It's an interpretation. It's not right or wrong. Could be good. Could be better. Could be best. Let me know. You'll see it goes through the chorus again. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. And then verse 3. This is a line that Cohen didn't use in his original. But baby, I've been here before. I've seen this room and I've walked this floor. You know, I used to live alone before I knew you. But baby, I've been here before. I've seen this room and I've walked this floor, you know. And he does like, you know, as if it's so matter of fact, like, you know, I used to live alone before I knew you. And the last three lines, and I've seen your flag on the marble arch, and love is not a victory march. This I was confused by, because as far as I've researched, Cohen didn't directly interpret this line. From what I gathered, it might be implying from the Old Testament the Roman victory over Israel and of the Jews, the Arch of Titus, or the Ark of Titus, excuse me. So that victory coming from his lover, and the lover probably taking advantage of his love at that moment in time. And it says at the very end, it's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah. And he's going to repeat that line in the fifth verse. So this is the third verse. He's going to repeat that in the fifth. And there's a specific amount of intensity behind it. So that second verse, as I told you, it's kind of a soft crescendo and a decrescendo. So it probably goes up to a mezzo forte, down to a mezzo piano, maybe piano. just to kind of express that intimacy and that hallelujah kind of being orgasmic. But you'll notice with verse 3, it's a lot more intense. And I've seen your flag on the marble arch, and love is not a victory march. It's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah. Damn, messed up that broken. There's a glitch in that. Anyway, he emphasizes the word broken. That's where it's the most broken, and it's the most intense part of that song, because he's trying to make a point. That hallelujah, the way that he understood it, that sexual one, gave out a lot of pleasure. It was a sense of ecstasy. This one, it's cold and it's broken. This is how he understands hallelujah to be now. Then it goes back to the chorus. The chorus is natural. Hallelujah, hallelujah. And the last one has a little bit of variation. It's nothing new right there. The variation probably doesn't have a point to it, but it's a musical choice. Wasn't an accident. And then the guitar tone sort of replicates exactly what happened at the beginning of the song. So it starts to get sexual and sensual, intimate. And then at about 3 minutes, 53 seconds, he puts in another verse. Well, there was a time you let me know what's really going on below, but now you never show it to me, do ya? Remember when I moved in you, the holy dove was moving too, and every breath we drew was hallelujah. So let's go through those lines, because this verse is the most sexual verse of the song, by far. Well, there was a time you let me know what's really going on below. Now, maybe you can try to stretch it and interpret it as being like, oh, maybe someone feeling down and then they want to express themselves like, no, you never show that to me, do you? It's really going on below. It's referencing sexual organs, for sure. But now you never show that to me, do you? Well, he doesn't get intimate with that person before. That person has no reason to present that, so now they never show it to him, do they? But this is the most sexual line. But remember when I moved in you? It's not emotional moving. It's thrusting moving. Like very intimate, sensual thrusting. But remember when I moved in you? And the holy dove. The holy dove, not quite sure about that line. I don't know if the holy dove is the act of sexual intimacy. It might be a reference to the conception of Mary in the Bible, but I'm leaning toward the act. And the holy dove and that hallelujah at the very end replicates the same hallelujah in the very first verse. I know it looks like I'm pointing at nothing, but I'm looking at a sheet of paper with my notes. So it's like, and every breath we drew was hallelujah. As if he's experiencing once more some form of ecstasy. Then you have the verses again. And verse 5, something a little bit different. He references God. Or he makes a reference to God potentially being there. So maybe there's a God above, but all I've ever learned from love was how to shoot at someone who outdrew you. There's a definition that you need to get first. It's to outdraw, so outdrew. Something happened in the past. He was outdrawn, I guess, but outdrewn. Outdrew. Outdrew? He was outdrew? Outdrawn? Outdrew, drawn. Drew, drawn, drew. So he was outdrew. And to outdraw means that a person or event attracts another crowd to a person or event. In this sense, he's referencing another person. So this implies some sort of jealousy. I don't think it's a literal shooting, but to kind of like shoot a glare at someone that you have no care for because they took the thing that you care about the most. And potentially his former lover was drawn to someone else. And that's how the narrator or the singer shows how he's jealous, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. And the last three lines replicate exactly what happened in verse 3. And it has that same intensity of how hallelujah is defined according to the artist. And it's not a cry that you... Oh, sorry. And it's not a cry that you hear at night. It's not somebody who's seen the light. It's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah. So the highest point of the note being at broken, at the kin at least, and then it backing off at the hallelujah. So we end the song, or we end the verses at least, for what the artist perceives to be the hallelujah. And that sexual intimacy brought about by love, potentially, or vice versa, had been betrayed. It's cold. It's broken. It's not there. It's sour. It's gone. And then you go into the verses, and so it's hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. And then you get to verse 7, and then verse 8. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Sorry, that was bad. Hallelujah. And it holds the note for a good portion of time, actually. And you notice in the background the guitar playing. And it's playing almost to the point of vigorous, but it's very soft. It's very mild, but it's as though as he holds that ooh, you hear a bunch of memories going through his head at that time. And that hallelujah that he wants to. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Ends it at a piano or a pianissimo. Ah, man, I need to not listen to myself sing. Just do it. Just do it. It's the worst thing I can do. But those last verses of the Hallelujah show him experiencing pretty good grief. Not Charlie Brown, good grief, but like grieving for this thing that he once had. That he tries to hold to a high standard, and at the same time you can hear the memories through the guitar going through his head. The happiness that he experienced. And at the end, he was betrayed. He was broken. It's cold. That's how it went. So, I love this version of the song. I think it's so good. Like my favorite version, at least at the moment of speaking of this, is the one by Rufus Wainwright. Album versions, I should specify. That being said, Rufus Wainwright is also the first version of Hallelujah that I heard. I'm going to be going over this in the next part. But Jeff Buckley's, it holds a lot of emotion behind it. A lot of tension. It's almost raw in the album version. Like raw emotion. But still, it's recorded, it's modified, and it's distributed that way. But man, it sounds so pure. And it has a huge sexual connotation to the song. Again, this is not a Christian song. And the weird thing is, so Rufus Wainwright uses the same lyrics that Jeff Buckley does, and I think it's wonderful because he uses more of like, what is it? I don't have the word for it right now, so I'm not going to think about it or try to edit this. It makes it sound more like something that you would hear in a church, but he still uses the same language, the same lyrics behind it to still emphasize a similar point, except Rufus Wainwright uses both romantic and sexual, but the sexual is not as explicit as Jeff Buckley's. Now, what drives me crazy are other versions of the song that uses Jeff Buckley's lyrics. You could probably guess which group I'm about to get to. Fucking Pentatonics uses this. Again, I have nothing against them, but apparently I like ranting about the things that I dislike, and I dislike that version of their version of that. I dislike that version of their song. So, in the meantime, listen to Rufus Wainwright. We get to part 3. See you soon.